All right, everybody, here is our video for the chapter. Make sure you have your your blue takeaway page in front of you. And we are going to start with our graphing. So that's why I'm looking here. We'll want to identify our transformations, create our table. Just a reminder, the table is going to come from whatever the numerator is over x. And then your table will be using whatever your numerator is, the opposite 1 and -1. So you'll be plugging those in for x to do your math and get y. Don't forget you will have to move your asymptotes, our little trick, y flies by, x is depressed. We'll graph our points, and then we will identify our arrows with an x and y value, and we'll let our asymptotes help us do that. So in my first problem, if I just identify the transformations, I have a stretch of 2, that's the numerator. I have a left of 2 by the denominator, and I have a down of 3 from what's subtracted at the end. My table is going to be using the 2 over the x. So the x values I pick will be 2, let's use that as -2, 1, and -1. So I'm going to take these numbers and put them into here. All right, so 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by -2 is -1. 2 divided by 1 is 2, and with the -1 I get a -2. Next, I'm going to go ahead and move my asymptotes. So my horizontal asymptote is going to move down 3, so y is flying by at -3. And with that, x will move left 2, so x is depressed at -2. And now I'm going to take my points, and I'm going to start from the center. So remember, here's my center, my new starting point. And I'm going to go, let's see, right 2, up 1, left 2, down 1, right, graphed those wrong. All right, let me start over there. So right 2, up 1, left 2, down 1. Then I'll go right 1, up 2, and left 1, down 2. And now when I connect, here's how I will connect. And I know that blue's a little tough to see. All right, let's get our arrows. So let's start with, let's go to this one. Take it back. Okay, let's go to this arrow first. So this arrow is going to the right, so I have infinity. And I know the y value if I look at my y flies by number of -3. So from there, I jump to this arrow, and it will just be -infinity with -3. And then I go to this arrow, and if you notice, we can use our wall to help us. The x will be -2, and it's going up, so infinity. And then this will be -2, but just -infinity. So my domain, I will be using my small x and my big X. So on the first shape, when I look at my x's, the smaller x is -infinity to -2. And then I'll go to the other shape, look at my x's, and the smaller x is -2, and the bigger x is infinity. So when I do my range, I'll focus on the y's. So first shape, the smaller y is -infinity to -3. And then when I look at my bigger shape, I will go from -3 to infinity. My equation of my horizontal asymptote, so horizontal goes this way, that's my y flies by line. And vertical goes up and down, so that's my x is depressed line. All right, next one. So again, let's discuss these transformations. So the first thing we've got is a flip. We have a stretch with the 4, and then we have right 3, and there is no up or down. So going to my table, I will be using my numerator over x to get my y's. So I just want to make sure I use the numerator, its opposite, 1, and its opposite. So now I'm going to take these numbers and put them in for x. So -4 divided by -4 is 1. Divided by 4 is -1. -4 divided by 1 is -4. And then divided by -1 is +4. So I'm going to go ahead and get my wall. So nothing moved up or down. So my y flies by is just going to stay where it is. So y is going to fly by at 0. And then x is going to be depressed right 3 at x equals 3. So let's go ahead and get these points graphed. So I'm going to, from my starting point here, that's the starting point, I will go left 4, up 1, and then I'll go right 4, down 1. I'll go right 1, down 4, and left 1, up 4. And then I can make this curved shape and my other curved shape. All right, going for the arrows. So let's start with our first arrow right here. So again, looking at this arrow, I already know the y value. It's going to be 0 according to my wall number, this right here. So x is infinity. Then I can jump to this side and just make it negative infinity 0. When I go to this arrow, I can see that the x value will be 3, and it's going up for infinity. And then with this arrow, I'll have 3, but just negative infinity. And then I can do my domain, again, and my range. So my domain, I'll use small x, big X, and on the other shape, the x's. So in the left shape, I go from negative infinity to 3. And in the right shape, I go from 3 to infinity. When I do the range, I'll use the y's. So there's for one shape, there's the other shape. And I'll write smallest to biggest. So 0 to, 0. Well, so anyways, one is 0 to infinity, this is throwing me off, and the other one is negative infinity to 0. My horizontal asymptote, again, horizontal goes like that. That's my y flies by is 0. My vertical, up and down, that's x is depressed at 3. All right, those are your graphing examples. Let's go into the simplifying. So let's just remind ourselves on the takeaways what that is going to entail. So we need to factor our numerator completely. We need to factor our denominator completely, and then you want to make sure that if what you're factoring is a monomial, so let's say what you're trying to factor, the only thing you see is something like this, that you could factor this into 8 with x squared. You could take 8 into 2 and 4, and then you could take 4 into 2 and 2. And you could take x squared into x and x. So if I were looking at the factors, I would say this as my factors of 8x squared. All right. The no box and the open circle box we will deal with when we come to it. But anyway, factoring, GCF, difference of squares, and slow down if your a isn't 1, like it's 2 or 3 or 4. Okay, so going back to my review. So I just need to factor the numerator on the simplifying. All right, so factor the numerator. First thing I'm going to look for is a GCF. This indeed has a GCF. So I'm taking that 2 out. I'm left with this. Now I'm going to keep factoring. I'm going to make my x. So factors of negative 12 that make 4 would be 6 with negative 2. And we love x squared. That makes our factoring much easier. So my numerator will have a GCF of 2, and then it turns into x plus 6 and x minus 2. So now I'm going to go to the denominator, and we're going to factor here. So again, this has a GCF also of 2. So here goes my 2. I'm left with x squared minus 36. This is a difference of squares. So I'll bring my 2, and it's x plus 6, x minus 6. And now we get to cross off whatever is common between the top and the bottom. So just going back to this. It does say here, wrap all your final fractions in parentheses, cancel out your common parentheses or factors. So going back, everything's wrapped in parentheses except the 2, so I'll get those. And now all the parentheses go or none of them go. So the 2's can go, the x plus 6 can go, but when I'm done, I have x minus 2 over x minus 6. All right, let's just keep looking at any in this problem that deal with simplifying, multiplying, and dividing. So I'm going to get all of those because this is fresh in my mind. So the next one is adding, so I won't do that one. Here's subtracting, but on 6 I have multiplying, so I am going to factor everything. So let's start with the 5x cubed. This is a single thing, which I can break into 5 and then 3 x's multiplying. So if I start coming over here, that numerator is 5 times x times x times x. All right, let's go for this denominator now. So my denominator on the left side, I'm going to make my x. It does not have a GCF, so I need factors of 7 that make 8. That's going to be 7x and 1x. It's x squared, so it's easy factoring. It's x plus 7, x plus 1. All right, let's go to the top right numerator. Again, there's no GCF. I'm going to make my x. I need factors of -2 that make -1. That would be a -2x and a 1x. This is simple factoring, so I can just go straight to x and put in -2 plus 1. Finally, my right denominator. So the first thing I'd notice is I do have a 15 that I can GCF out. So here's the 15. I can also GCF out an x squared, and then I'm left with x minus 2. The 15x squared can factor further, so I'm going to break that into 15 and x squared. 15 can become 5 and 3. X squared can become x and x. So my right numerator is 5 times 3 times x times x times x minus 2. Now, just a reminder, in the takeaways, it does say wrap all final factors in parentheses, just to make sure we don't cross out too much. So anything that's not wrapped in parentheses, here it goes. So 5x, x, x, all these single things. All right, now we're ready to cross that stuff off. So crossing a 5 off and a 5 off, an x and an x, another x and another x. Let's see, x plus 1 and x plus 1, x minus 2 and x minus 2. So when I'm done and I scan my numerator, I see an x and I see an x plus 7. That's it. So let's go back to the takeaway page. I don't want you to think that you can take something like this and cross off these x's. This is a no. What you can do instead is wrap those final things in parentheses, and then yes, these x's can go. So just be careful of that, okay? All right, let's keep going through this. So I have a division. So going back to my takeaway page, I do need to remember, if you're dividing, don't forget to copy dot flop, keep change flip, whatever works for you. So I'm going to go ahead and just factor everything first. So starting with my first numerator, there's not a GCF, but in my takeaways, it does say slow down when your A isn't 1. It's not that easy factoring, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to need factors of -6 that make 1, so that's going to be 3x and -2x. So what I mean by slow down is x and x will not work. They don't make 2x squared. So I'm going to have to shove a 2 in front of one of them and then do these loops. So 2x with the -1 can make that -2x, and x with a +3 can make the 3x. All right, going to the denominator. Actually, let me get rid of that. I don't want that. All right, so going to my denominator on the left side. So this does not have a GCF, so I can go straight to my x. Oops. So I'll need factors of 6 that make -5, and that's going to be a -6 and a +1. Easy factoring though, so it'll be x and x, and I can just do -6 and +1. All right, let's go to the other fraction. So in my numerator, I don't see anything. I can't do anything. So I'm going to go ahead and do the dot, but I'm going to flip it now, or flop it, and I'm going to move the 2x plus 3 down here. And then this particular denominator, once I factor it, will move into the numerator. So that, I'll go ahead and put it in the numerator spot, take out a 5. I'll be left with x minus 2. This 5 can't have anything done with it, so I'll just bring it along. And now wrap anything in parentheses that's not in parentheses, and we'll do our canceling out. So I see a 2x plus 3. That's it, right? I'm not seeing anything else. Oh, timeout. I realized I messed up. Let's come back to this denominator right here. This does not work. It should have been, sorry about that. So factors of 6 that make -5 are actually -2 and -3. So let's just come up here, fix that. Okay, my apologies. So it's actually x minus 2, x minus 3. So it seems I can cross out a little bit more. All right, I can take out those x minus 2. So when I'm done, in my numerator, I have a 5 and an x minus 1. And in my denominator, it looks like I just have an x minus 3. Finished. All right, couple more like this. Here's another, just simplifying. So I'm going to start in my numerator. I'm going to look for a GCF. In my numerator, I can see I can take a 4, and it looks like an x cubed out, and I'm left with x minus 8. This 4x cubed can turn into 4 with x cubed. The 4 can turn into 2 and 2, and the x cubed can turn into 3x's. So my numerator will be 2 times 2 times x times x times x with x minus 8. All right, let's go to our denominator. So our denominator, looking here, I do see I can take out a 2 and an x, and I'm left with x squared minus 5x minus 24. So this 2 and x I can't do anything really with. I mean, I could separate them into 2 times x. And then this part, I'll use my x. So I'll need factors of -24 that make -5, which will give me -8 and 3. This is nice factoring, so I can go to my parentheses. I can dump in the x's along with -8 and +3. Put parentheses around everything that doesn't, so all these individual pieces. All right, now we're going to cross off. So in the top, I can take off a 2 and a 2, an x and an x, and x minus 8. So final answer in the numerator, the only thing I see left are 2 x's, x times x. You could also write x squared. And in the denominator, I have x plus 3. And then that's it. You do not get to cross anything else off. All right, number 10, this is like a capstone question. So I see division, that is copy dot flop. So here's copy. Here's dot, here's flop. And then this is your houses. All right, so a house for numbers, x's and y's. It's not a very good 12. Okay, let's rewrite that 12. All right, so x squared, y with y squared, 4 with y cubed, and 9 and x to the 5th. So what is probably the easiest one to do? I don't know. Let's start here. This is where I subtract the exponents. So for final answer, I'll have 3 x's in the bottom. Then I think I'll go to the y's. My numerators can actually turn into y to the 3rd, and then I notice that the y to the 3rds can actually just cancel out, so there will not be any y's. As far as this goes, if I really wanted to in my numbers, 12 could break into 4 and 3, and then the 4 could break into 2 and 2. This 4 can break into 2 and 2, and this 9 can break into 3 and 3. So if that helps, you're going to realize you can take out all the 2's and a set of 3's, so that when you're left, you have a 3, which is in the denominator, and you do need a numerator here of 1. All right, looks like we've got adding and subtracting. So we're going to do these two and then end this video. So first thing, going back to my takeaways, adding, subtracting. Do we have to turn any subtraction to addition? And then we're going to factor our denominators so we can find our LCD, and then we're going to make our LCD. So let's start there. So my first one, yes, I do have subtraction. Turn this into addition, make that subtraction. Now I'm going to factor my x squared plus 3x minus 10. There is not a GCF. So I'm going to need factors of negative 10 that make 3. And the 2 will be negative, so easy factoring. This will be replaced with x plus 5 and x minus 2. Now I'm going to factor the other one. There is not a GCF, so again, I'm going to make my x. I'm going to need factors of 15 that make my 8, so that's going to be 5 and 3. And easy factoring, x plus 5 and x plus 3. So if you cannot see your least common denominator, go to your fraction table, fraction 1, fraction 2, to find your LCD. All right, I've got an x plus 5 and an x minus 2. In my second fraction, I have an x and 5, but I also have an x plus 3. So if I bring everything down, these are the 3 things, that's supposed to be a 2, that all the denominators need. All right, found the LCD. So going back to my takeaways. So add missing parts to the denominator so that each denominator has the LCD, and whatever you do to the bottom, we're going to do to the top. Okay, so bottom, let's see, where were we? Okay, I'm going to write the LCD down here and actually erase this because I'm writing pretty big. Okay, that's just so I don't forget it. Now I'm going to get rid of this table. All right, the first fraction is missing an x plus 3. The second fraction is missing an x minus 2. Now, whatever I did to the bottom, I'll do to the top. Going back to my takeaways page, we can start writing our answer because we already know the denominator, so let's get it written down. All right, so my answer will be, as far as getting my final answer written down, here. So I'll have my common denominator. All right, going back to the takeaways page, now I'm going to clean up and simplify my numerator by distributing or use the neighbors and combining like terms, and then I can just place that numerator in its proper place above the least common denominator. So here is numerator work. I had a 4 and I gave it an x plus 3. And then I had a negative 2 and I gave it an x minus 2. So let's start here. Okay, so distributing, I'm going to get 4x. I'm going to actually put it over here. This is very tight, plus 12. And then I'm going to have negative 2x, which I'll stack with a positive 4. And then when I add this up in my numerator, I'll have 2x plus 16. There you go. Okay, let's go to this one. So starting here again, I'm going to start in the beginning. Do I have to turn any subtraction to addition? I do not. I'm going to factor my denominators, and then I'm going to find my LCD. So the first one does factor. It becomes x plus 3, x minus 3. Here goes my table. All right, bringing everything down. Here is my LCD. So going to my takeaways page. Now I'm going to add my missing parts to the denominator so that each denominator has the LCD, and then whatever you do to the bottom, we're about to do to the top. So the bottom, the first one doesn't need anything. The next one needs an x minus 3, and I'll also give it to the top. Now I can start to write my answer. So I can start writing my answer. I already know my least common denominator. So here starts my answer of x plus 3, x minus 3. And then the final step of the takeaways is clean up, simplify your numerator with distributing or neighbors, and combine your like terms. And then we can put that numerator in its proper place. Okay, so we're going to have for our numerator a 3x, and then we had a 4x and gave it an x minus 3. So I will distribute, and I will get 4x squared. I'll get a negative 12x, which I'll stack. So when I'm done, I get 4x squared minus 9x, and there is my final answer. So that is your first video. I'm going to make a different video for the last page.